The mess of messianism. Full disclosure, I hate it. All its associations and associated madnesses, the grip it has on our lack of imagination, its hierarchies, its invention of and insistence upon hierarchy, its divisions of good and evil that makes evil blind to itself, its silly gods, its ministers and naked emperors. Living as I do in a messianic culture that interprets life in its own image, it has taken me a while to make my case to her culture, to bear witness, to give my testimony. The realization of separation, not the speaking of it, I have borne since I was very young. As we all live largely secret, separate existences, especially here, I made some really flawed assumptions about brotherhood and sisterhood, etc. As a non-messianic, though, I have a lucky trick. I do not speak to the person's chosen identity. I communicate as much as possible with who and what you actually are, despite what you believe. I've been working on a play. I usually am working on a play. Right now it is Medea, the Greek Medea, not the funny guy. She kills her children. We recoil. This is a massive taboo. The culture that wrote this play was not messianic. So our culture that is messianic, and it does taboo a lot, has a very hard time relating to it. Except our messianism kills children a lot while saying it's wrong. We deplore out of one side of the mouth, but that is a cultural habit. Every bar has a parking lot. So the play can be related to. I'll not be playing Medea, not in a theater, but I go through her speeches in English after Seneca and Euripides and to try to make sense of them. It's tough and it takes time. Then one tries to speak them so they make sense to you out there, which is even tougher. This is now an English translation of a Roman take on a Greek original that is a folk myth made into a play, to be performed for, understood by, and empathized with a new audience, a now audience. I saw a thing today that referenced the difference between drama then and now. The lights were on, for one thing. The plays were arguments, discussions, part of the democracy. It is an astonishing thing if you think about it, not propaganda like most today. The playwright's content was not censored or controlled. Imagine, these writers were valued and prizes were won. They weren't even producers saying this'll work. The only thing they could not do was depict violence on stage. Oh Lord, I will study up on this way of doing things. It is not what we do. By the time of Shakespeare, he was writing massive propaganda. By then, the culture was, yes, messianic. Messianism is believing, to clarify, there is a savior and that we need saving. That is the spring, the fount, I think, with endless possibilities, obviously connecting to utopianism, bestism, quote, you know what you should doism, obedience, leaderism, roadmaps to the soul, aspiration to something that looks like money, at last confusing wealth with worth, merit, and wisdom. That sometime in the past, heroes existed, prophets who wrote the laws of human nature on stone and paper, patriarchs, purer than us today, unconfused by modernity and our current silliness, everybody else's silliness, and evidence. Yes, the original hierarchs from Philadelphia to Sinai, creating hierarchies of all things us. The natural assumption for this to get purchased is that we are at best born empty, at worst bad, and can be taught, led, influenced, or saved to become adults or the next best thing. And there is a long line, therefore, of teachers, leaders, influencers, saviors, and acting teachers promising arrival in a promised land. That's all. It is a middling theory made powerful by our weakness. There are many options, but they require much more of us individually. That we all seem hypnotized by this one is understandable. We are conditioned from babies. I always wince when someone claims freedom. It is supposed to be one of the Western-only realities. Of course, it isn't. One is never free of anything without being free of cultural indoctrination. The Jesus story, among many others, says this wonderfully, but that realization is another taboo. He says several times, stop hating and being afraid, which is practically all we do. I challenge every syllable of the Messianic way of thinking.